Good Shabbos. This week is Parshas Re'eh. There's a passage in this week's portion which talks about the court's responsibility to search out the truth of a matter. They're investigating whether someone did something wrong or not. And it says, V'sha'al tahetiv, you shall ask very well, V'nei emes nachon adavar, if it's true and correct, the thing that nasa to'ev hazos b'kerbecha, that this abomination was done, then it follows through with what should be done, the punishment. I want to focus on the word emes, or emet, which is truth. And we're all used to the idea of there's two opposing ideas, emes and sheker, truth and falsehood. And when we see the word emes, we automatically think of truth, and we think of truth in the way that something is exactly as it was. So when you're talking about historical truth, that which we say happened in the past, has to be true. Otherwise, it's not the fact, it's not truth. It's sheker, it's falsehood. But what's interesting is, when you read the Torah, up until now, when the Torah uses the word emes, it doesn't seem to mean truth. It seems to mean loyalty. Because, for example, when Eliezer, the servant of Avram, says that God should do him a chesed ve'emes, a kindness and a truth, and help him find the proper woman for Yitzchak, his master, as a wife, it doesn't sound like it's saying anything about truth. Do for me a kindness and a truth makes no sense. It makes more sense, do for me a kindness and have a loyalty. The example I like to give is, we use this in English, when you do the spokes on a wheel, you make sure that they're true, that they're straight, that they're going to do what they're supposed to do. That's really loyalty. And therefore, Eliezer was asking, do for me a kindness and remain loyal to me, God, and make sure that my mission that I'm given, I'm able to fulfill to the requirements of that which Avram had asked of me to find a wife for Yitzchak. It's only here, I believe, when the idea of truth seems to be start to be the point where the word means, where emes means truth. And even here, I think it could be interpreted as it's saying is that the facts are loyal to what happened. In other words, it's correct, meaning it's true, but it's loyal to the facts. And then the word starts to change meaning to actually mean truth. Now, you might say, who cares? What's the difference, what it means or when it meant it? But I think it's important for us to understand that the search for truth that we think of in modern times didn't always exist. Maimonides very famously says that when man was created, Adam and Eve, in the Garden of Eden, it says they were eating from the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra, the tree of knowledge of good and bad. He says that until that point, what did they care about? Truth and falsehood. And then when they were created and they're put in this world, everything is only good or bad, which are opinions. It's subjective, it's not objective. Now, Maimonides is suggesting that the idea of truth always existed, and I'm perhaps respectfully disagreeing and saying that no, the Torah is actually saying that that's all that exists, is good and bad. At least from the human perspective, all we understand is the idea that this is what we believe. This is what we want the meaning of the facts to be, that they should be good. It should be what we want. It's all subjective. It's all opinion. And therefore, human beings in general didn't think in terms of facts. And this has an importance when we talk about history. So when we think of history, we want exactly the facts. But when you read ancient history that's written, we see that history was not written as facts. History all the time really, was written from the perspective of the victor or the one who's writing it, or for a certain purpose. And therefore, if we think about it in that way, we could read the Torah, all of the Torah, in a different light. That we don't have to concern ourselves so much with whether something was actually factually true, is exactly what had happened. No, it's not so much what's fact as much as what's loyal to the ideas and the perspective that the Torah is trying to teach us. The Torah wants to teach us that you should be good, and therefore it tells the story in a certain way which makes sure that that message comes across. We want to be loyal, perhaps, to the notions that we're trying to promote, not so much the particular exact facts as they happen. So therefore, when you tell a story, and we all do that, we tell a story from our perspective. I'm not suggesting that there's alternative facts, that things are not as they always seem, and that everything is just your own narrative. But it's the way human beings think. Human beings think from their own narrative. They always interpret things from their perspective. They could tell the same, two people could tell the same story about what happened, and they have a whole different perspective. There's a different twist on it. The facts might be different. It's only as the Torah progresses and as human beings progress, the idea of facts and science being exact and philosophical truths that Maimonides was talking about become more important. But we have to remember that's not necessarily what most of the Torah is really teaching us. And it's not really perhaps what most human beings are striving for, at least outside of science, outside of medicine. In those areas, of course, you need exact truth. You need objective truth. But when it comes to history, which is teaching you morals or teaching you the purpose of life, really we're not looking for facts. We're really looking for ideas and perspective that are supposed to be consistent with the morals that we're trying to promote. And that might even be a way to answer a different question. The Kabbalists always talk about Yaakov as being the midah, the character trait of emes, of truth. And when you read the Torah, of course, you see that Yaakov doesn't tell the truth. He goes to his father, he says, Anochi Esav b'charecha, I am Esav, your firstborn. And perhaps that's the whole idea, that when the Kabbalists were talking about truth, they're not talking about facts. They're talking about goals. They're talking about a certain perspective. They're talking about the ends. And yes, you might say, oh, does the end justify the means? In a certain way, it sometimes does. So again, not trying to distort the facts as much as trying to understand how the Torah works and how human beings generally work, and it changes our perspective on how we talk to people. Do we just care about exactly what happened, or do we care about the purpose of the message that we're trying to promote when we tell over a certain story? Good Shabbos.